It's a really interesting window ahead for Brazil, ahead of the World Cup qualification, Steve, because they're in a position now, Brazil, where we've not necessarily seen the free-flowing Brazilian way football over the last, 18 months, certainly since Qatar. They're not the side that we've seen since we were kids and seeing these brilliant Brazil World Cup sides. Are they in danger, Stevie, of missing out on the next World Cup, or is that just maybe a little bit of a stretch too far?
I think that's a stretch, Kev. To think about Brazil missing out would be sensational, wouldn't it? It'd be a huge, huge shock. But you mentioned it, Kev. The players that we remember, the sides that we remember through World Cups, 82, 86, 90, 94, as you start going through the years, Brazil always had that one outstanding player, usually number 10, someone who could carry the weight of that shirt, carry the nation, and could come up with special moments at special times. And
Mm.
when I look at Brazil, they've got a lot of strength and depth, don't they, Kev? But do they have that guy? Have they got an established player that's ready to step into the fold? I'll ask you the question. I don't see it at the moment.
Mm. I don't remember '82, Steve. You might be a bit older than me, so I maybe I go to '86 as my World Cup reference, starting reference. But it is right. I look at World Cup stars that they've had and players that have been able to get them to World Cup. Zico, maybe going back a little bit before people, that was '86, certainly my first World Cup. And then maybe even after that, certain players that they've had, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. Even Neymar to an extent. I know it's certainly 14 went a little bit wrong after Neymar's injury in 14, but that one player that they've had that were able to carry the probably several World Cup players that they've got in the squads had. I think they've probably got two or three world class players in the squads now, Stevie. But in the squad now, but they don't have a real player that's going to be the icon, the iconic number 10. They don't have that. And I know
Yeah.
Neymar might bring them something back with after he comes back from injury, but I just don't see a Brazil side that's going to go and outscore a side now, Stevie. It's been a bit of a defensive structure that's been able to keep them in game. They might win a game 1-0 with being organised, but it's not what we see from or we've seen from Brazil, and that's maybe something that's taken them away from the hearts of the nation as well, though, because I know politically they've had issues in Brazil, but certainly from the side, it's the team themselves. It's always been something that lifts the nation, and they don't seem to have that. They don't seem to have a connection with the people right now. It might be a little bit of a transitional period for the next 18 months ahead of the World Cup. Lift yourself and then get the team going again.
They're missing that flair, aren't they? They're missing that
Yeah.
that player, that joy that Brazil always bring to a major tournament, and they play with that freedom. That's been gone for a few years now. You wonder, Kev, is that the philosophy, or is that more around the selection of the players that Chichi had and Dorival
Does he
Jr.
trust them,
has
Stevie?
now?
Does he trust the players then? Whoever's coaching the side, whether it's been Chicho or whoever, is it a lack of trust in the players to go and win a game now?
I think it's, can they go and win a game in the Brazilian way, Kev? That seems to be the issue, doesn't it? They're proving they can go win games, but are they winning them with the flair that we expect? Are they potentially going to go on and win the tournament? That seems to be a big question mark over Brazil these days. Every
Mm.
tournament, every World Cup, we go into it thinking Brazil are one of the favourites, that they can win it. At the moment, we're looking at it and we're saying, yes, Brazil, we think will be there. I think it was a huge stretch and it would be sensational to think they're going to miss out in the World Cup. But I don't see them getting to semi-finals or finals, winning World Cups with this group of players. Yes, they've got Vinicius Jr. and he's been
Mm.
outstanding. He's won multiple Champions Leagues, Kev. But do you think he's got enough in the position that he plays? I know he ends up through the centre, but he's a wider player. Do you think he's that guy, that number 10, that leader type flair player that can push this side to World Cup glory? I've got my question marks about that at the moment.
Yeah, I think he is world class. I think that's fair to say, Stevie. I think he'd probably be right up there if you're talking about left-sided players right now across the world. He'd be at the top of many people's picks. But as a player that's going to open a game up, who's going to be the link guy from midfield to attack, that iconic number 10, Neymar to an extent could carry that type. But again, I spoke about his age before. Is his age maybe beyond him now? Vini Jr. I think it's a fair question to ask, Stevie. Is he going to be that iconic player that's going to score and create for them? I haven't seen it certainly in a Brazil shirt. I have to say that I haven't seen it consistently in a Brazil shirt. Yes, as you say, he's won multiple competitions with Real Madrid. He's had an incredible career or start of his career. He's still young enough to go on and get better and better. But no, if I'm being harsh, if I'm being totally honest, I don't see him as a Ronaldinho figure. I don't see him as a Ronaldo, a Zico, these sort of players, a Pele, or players that these iconic number 10 players that open up games, create, and really are the almost the torchbearer for Brazilian football. I don't see him being that player, to be honest with you. So it might be getting two or three other players of Vinicius Jr. types around him that they're able to maybe build maybe a consistent team around him. That might be the only way, Stevie. Not necessarily
Kev,
have
I
that
think
one iconic player that's going to lift them up.
Yeah, I'm going to say something, Kev. I think they're missing two types of players. They're missing that player that unlocks a door, that number 10, that key pass guy, that flair guy that we've spoke about a lot in this conversation. But they're also missing the nine. They're missing a
Yeah, yeah.
player, a striker, a Careca, a Ronaldo. They always had someone, didn't they, who put the ball in the back of the net. They always had a great number 9, Romario, Bebeto, could go through the lot of the players that through the years have been that goal scorer for Brazil. I don't know if they've got that at the minute. And I love Vinicius Jr. I think he's an outstanding player. I agree with you, he is world class. But I don't see the same Real Madrid Vinicius Jr. In a Brazil strip, in the yellow of Brazil. So that to me would be an issue. How do they get the best out of him? They've got a lot of young pretenders, Kev. They've got a lot of guys who could step into that fray. Endrick is 17 years old. He's definitely got tons of potential, but to me, it's a good bit away from being realised at that level, at the total world class level, winning World Cups and leading your side to victory.
Yeah.
Do you think Endrick's that guy? Do you think, when you look at the numbers that are underneath on the edges of this squad or on the edges of being regulars in this team, do you think any of them are going to step up in, sort of 2 years' time, just less than 2 years' time, and be that player at 26?
Yeah, it's a big ask, isn't it, Stevie? With the pressure that comes with wearing that Brazil jersey as well, and we've seen it with Gabriel Jesus, we've seen it with maybe Martinelli, with Anthony, even Firmino to an extent. I know Firmino's now at maybe the latter stage of his career, but none of those players have really stepped up, have they? Even those players I mentioned, Martinelli and Jesus in England right now, Anthony especially has been fairly dreadful in the Man United shirt across the course of the last year. So there's nobody around Vini Jr. And Rodrigo essentially, really, and that puts more pressure, I think, on Endrick. To be honest
Yeah.
with you, going into that side, being an iconic number 9 in that team, to go and score goals, to go and create, there's so much pressure, so much expectancy on his shoulders. Now, we have seen a lot of players that's able to handle that pressure in a Brazil shirt, but given the state of the team right now and the way that they've been performing, I think it's very rarely in my lifetime have I seen a Brazil so shy of scoring goals and lack of creativity in the team. So is Endrick going to be a guy that's going to create his own goals? I would say no. Right now, certainly at his age, I would say right now. And he's only going to be 19, 20 come the next World Cup anyway, Stevie. So
Not even a
to have a
certain starter
player...
with his club either, is he? He's not even
No,
starting every week
exactly.
with his club.
How's he going to get the game time? Is he going, Stevie? Is he going to get away and get on loan to get some game time as well? So there is a lack of creativity, as you said, and that 9 is the issue. I can't disagree with that really. And throughout the side, they look organised. They look difficult to break down defensively. They've got experience. Probably the 2 best goalkeepers in the world. That's not an issue for them. It is actually going and opening up the very best in the world.
So Kev, let's forget the European nations for a minute. Let's talk about CONMEBOL and the rankings there. Where does this team sit in their rankings? I got Argentina absolutely ahead of them. I think I
Yeah,
get Colombia and Uruguay ahead of them as well. Where do you see them
yeah.
sitting in the rankings? And when could we say that a Brazil side was probably the 4th best in the region? Normally they're 1 or 2 every single cycle. So, where do you think they are in that? And what do you think kind of needs to happen maybe for them to rise above, say, a Colombia and a Uruguay in terms of being there or thereabouts for 26?
Well, I think man for man, Stevie, they're probably better than those 2 sides. It's just that there's a great feeling around Colombian football right now. There's a great feeling around Uruguay. They both feel that they can now go and be seriously competitive in the next World Cup, judging certainly from what we saw at Copa America. So Brazil at fourth in the continent. That is where you look at, and it's unimaginable, really. And they've got Chile and Peru in the next window. They need to go and beat those sides convincingly. For me, to now go on and think, well, this is a serious competitive side that can go on to the World Cup, because we know that we've not got a lot of games now ahead of the World Cup. I think they'll qualify, Steve. I've got to make that on the record right now. I don't think Brazil will have a problem. There's so many outs for them to qualify for the World Cup, whether that would be via a playoff if all did go terribly wrong for them. I think they'll have enough to qualify. But they are now on the level, it seems, with Chile and sides that surround them. So they need to now go and maybe almost make the mark on those sides, go and beat them convincingly, and then we can then talk about Brazil seriously being a competitor for Argentina as the best on the continent there.
Yeah, I think when you look at that Argentinian side, it's well ahead of Brazil, in my opinion. And then you've got Colombia and Uruguay, who at the minute are definitely in better form and have a
Yeah,
clearer identity. I think that's been the issue. You know, there's been that defensive side to Brazil for previous years. I still think they're up there, Kev. When you look at the defence, you get
yeah,
Marquinhos, you've got Militao, who's injured for this window. You've got Allison, who's injured for this window, and Ederson, 1 and 2 in the world. We often agree on that, don't we, with the goalkeepers?
yeah,
So you've got that solidity. But I mean, is it maybe just a Brazil that we don't expect? Is it maybe a Brazil that has to be more pragmatic, that can win by being more defensive and having moments or two? It just seems so strange to be talking like that, doesn't it?
mm,
Because we expect Brazil to go at teams every single game, to have the flair, to have the ability to score 2, 3, 4 goals every single game. And, you know, we've mentioned this team, we've talked about the problems at nine, Endrick not being ready, Richarlison's way out of form, who's been a 9 for 9
yeah,
for the last couple of years. There's some guys that are in the squad, in and around, that play in Brazilian football that, you know, maybe we don't know loads about them, but we don't see necessarily the true potential in them. I just think that it's going to be a tough little stretch. They're going to qualify, but someone has to step up into that role as the leader, as the number 10, as the de facto champion of this team, the flair guy. And, you know, the pretenders to that throne are Vinicius Jr., they're Endrick, they're Rodrigo. But at the moment, I think there's a long way to go before any of the
mm.
three guys can truly say that they're in the same ilk as a Ronaldinho or a Zico or the other legends that we've spoke about here.
Yeah, let's be honest, Stevie. Now go back to your original point. There, the supporters will not have a more pragmatic Brazil side. They expect a Brazil team to go and overrun teams, go and outplay them in the final third of the field. It's just maybe it might just be a little bit, as you're saying there. Let's rein it in a little bit. Let's be a little bit more, just be competitive in games, which is unheard of, really, when you think about it. It's going to be an interesting window for Brazil, Stevie. I'm looking forward to it, to seeing how they perform. And let's see now how the next 18 months, 2 years goes for this Brazilian side.